drill. Talking business, talking shop, making moves non-stop. From e-com to hustle, straight talk, no props. Straight talk, no gimmicks, no lies. Hey, I break it down with the sharpest minds. Money moves, mindset, grind. If you're ready to win, then tune in live. Big names, big games, all the lessons they bring. From Jelly Belly to AA Kings. From the startup grind to the top tier pros. We crack the code, now here we go. Straight talk, commerce, getting to know. But Wayne Altman, let's start the show.
Radio has changed a lot since you started. You've been doing this, what, 40 years, 50 years?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
There's been a lot of change. You know, what do you consider the golden age of radio, A, and B, what has changed over that, your career, over the course of your career? What do you think has changed the most?
For me, the golden era was 60s into, let's say, early 2000s, before it started to collapse, is the word I'll use. And it was the visit that you felt when you would listen to somebody you liked on the radio. You could feel that there was no faking that. You either could pull the audience in or you couldn't, and you can't fake that with an audience. And that's what attracted me, as I mentioned, in the 60s, and then when I started in the 70s. And then when my first partner and I started, we were doing something that was not being done at all. And Howard Stern was in this mix now, where we're doing things that are really pushing the envelope from what it was. The envelope was pretty sealed, so it wasn't hard to push. And in Chicago, very conservative at that time, to say the things we were saying. We weren't doing it because we knew we were going to get a rise out of people. This is the way we talked and thought. And it was getting a rise out of people, but they had never heard it before because they were used to people talking to our parents and grandparents on the radio with that kind of cadence. So that's the era, and the 80s, it exploded, and it was just incredible because now across the country, people, and I can say this, and hopefully not in an ego fashion, when Steve and I would travel around the country and listen to the radio, you could tell that they had heard our show because they were saying stuff we'd said about a week or two ago in the same way. It was something that was too obscure to just come out by themselves with.
You weren't hearing it before.
So we were.
Once we started doing it, we picked it up.
But what it was, the two-man show became a thing around the country. And you heard a lot of two-man shows after that because people went, oh, this thing's really popular in Chicago. We'll get one. And that's what happened around the country. So it really when the timing is right, my whole philosophy in life, good timing and good lighting, that's all life is. And the timing was right. We caught a wave and rode it. And that's what it really becomes, where a lot of people have talent, but they just can't get that right break.
Tell me about the White Sox promotion. Because I think this is really kind of, I mean, if you can, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long time ago, but it is in the history books, where when I was working the all-night shift at this one radio station, the station was sold, and in some of those cases back then, they would fire the whole staff, put a new format on or whatever, and I thought, well, I'm on the all-night shift. If they're going to do some firing, I'll be the last guy they get to. In the meantime, they hired a consultant who hired what became my partner from a station who was working at a station that turned to a disco format because disco was super hot at the time, and he got blown out and got hired at the station I was on to do mornings. So at 6A, I was leaving my shift. He was coming on, and I had listened to him on the other station enough to know this guy's got an interesting personality. I'm picking things up here that I've never heard before. So when he started, I didn't know the guy before that. I would say something at the end of my show that he could kind of grab onto at the start of his show. And then I'd say, yeah, and Steve Dahl is next. And I'd leave. About 2 or 3 days in, I said something, and he said to me, don't go anywhere. I like what you just said. Let's talk about it. And we sat and we did about 10 minutes on his show. The next day we did 20 minutes. At the end of the week, we were doing an hour together, and the program director was listening to this and going, you two guys, we're putting you together. You're going to do news on Steve's show, and you have some incredible banter going here. We like it. Me being naive, I said, okay, so I'll do the all-night show and then stay on with Steve for his show. And he goes, no, the all-night show is toast. Say goodbye to the all-night show.
Yeah, you're not doing that anymore.
No, that's
you,
gone.
You created your own partner. Yeah, that wasn't something that was
no. That's like I said. It's got to be organic. You can't force stuff. It has to either work or it doesn't, because it just, you find people in your orbit and then it goes or it doesn't.
Wow. What inspired you then to do the Garry Meier Show podcast? You're now on YouTube.
Wait a minute. I didn't answer your question about White Sox.
Oh, that's right. Well, I was going to say maybe it was your way of kind of.
Along with Steve starting at this radio station.
Thank you.
He was not happy about what happened to him at the other station. And he started talking about that on the air. And he said, I hate disco. I got blown out because of disco, or one of the two stories is he either got blown out or he quit when they went disco. And he started getting more and more into it. And then he put on a Bee Gees record and then scratched it, because we still had turntables, if you can believe this era. Wow. is something from then. And he would scratch the record and then take it off, and you could hear him breaking it on the air. He'd smash it over the microphone. And the phones lit up, because there were a lot of rock people that hated disco too. So we tapped into something there. And so every morning we play another disco record and break it on the air. And then
you get calls encouraging that. You were being encouraged.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, because let's be honest, Wayne, the most dangerous group in society, I read, is 15 to 25-year-old males in groups. And you were one once.
Oh, yeah.
So was I. From 15 to, you have a lot of, it seems, steam and anger or a lot of other things in there that you need to let out. Yeah. And I think that's what we were tapping into. It could have been, I don't know if disco, it was just disco was the conduit. It could have been anything else. We don't like pineapple on pizza. We're going to blow up pizza, whatever. So then a local nightclub said, hey, why don't you come out to the club one night and break records between the band set as a promotion? Okay. So we go out there. We talked about it on the air. We're going out to this place. We go out there. There were 2,000, 3,000 people trying to get in as we got there. And so, oh, wow. So then we went to another place, several thousand people, and it started to build. This was March of '79. And then the director of activities at White Sox Park heard about it and said, hey, I do a teen night here every summer, and I think you guys should come out and do a disco demolition between a doubleheader. I thought, okay. So we made it a big promotion. The way you got into the park, you brought a disco album, and 98 cents, the frequency was 97.9, so 98 cents to get in. They would collect all the disco albums at the entrance, and then between the doubleheader between the White Sox and the Tigers, they were going to blow them up in center field. Okay. So we get to the park that afternoon. It was a night, twilight, doubleheader, twilight. Yeah, that's what they used to call them. And there must have been 5,000, 10,000 people outside the park, because the park was capacity. There were 50,000. Yeah, 50,000 kids, pretty much all of our audience in the park. And we, this is going to be something, right? So the design of this was, after the first game, we were going to go out in an Army Jeep, because my partner was in an Army uniform. This was really his cause and everything. So I was just tagging along for the ride and enjoying it. The deal was, we would go out between the games, center field, say a few things. He had a song called Do You Think I'm Disco to Rod Stewart's Do You Think I'm Sexy? He'd sing a little bit of that, and then they'd blow up the records. So we go out there, and some of the people didn't turn their records in, and they were flinging them like Frisbees across the field, and it was crazy. It was about 90 degrees, and so heat and youth and beer, that's a cocktail. So we do our little shtickle, and they blow them up. We get back on the Jeep, we go outside the park, make our way back up to the booth, the broadcast booth, and looked down, and it's pandemonium. People started running on the field and throwing the records that were out there around that hadn't been blown up, starting fires. And it was
a riot, full on riot.
well, I don't know. In my definition of riot, it was pandemonium and
Not
controllable.
quite a riot.
But
Okay, I get you.
they told everybody to get back in their seats. They called the police. They got a lot of police out there. They finally got it calmed down, but I guess some people had ripped up some of the sod in the field. So this is the only time the White Sox had to forfeit a game. They had
I
to
was just going
forfeit
to say, to Detroit, they forfeited a game.
They forfeited the
Detroit
game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was one of the very few forfeits in
Yeah.
Major League Baseball history.
Yeah.
Was this night? That's why I wanted you to tell this story.
Yeah. So that was about
crazy.
3-4 months into our partnership. So there you have it.
Oh, wow. And it just blew up across the country.
Internationally, we had international press on that.
Yeah, that's insane. All right, look, I'm going to go back to the question that I asked too. Because look, I love hearing that story. I have read that story, also accounts of that story. You did a very good job of telling it, because that's exactly what historically what that story is. What inspired you to do the podcast that you're doing now?
Well, radio was turning at an angle that I didn't get anymore, and the headwinds were really unfavorable to do. Well, let me put it this way. Let me back up a little bit. I was doing very well on this radio station in Chicago, WGN. Very well. They bring in a new manager, and I don't know what he was thinking. He decided I wasn't doing well or something, but he didn't blow me out. He said, I want to put you on our streaming platform. And I thought, well, streaming, hell, that's the future. Thank you. Yeah. So I go onto their streaming platform. I'm doing very well there. And then they decide, I don't know what the bug was with me. This was a former manager of mine from another station. So maybe he carried some ill will or whatever. Yeah. But that, I don't care. It's a business. You hired me to perform.
Right.
And it's ratings and revenue. That's what I deliver. I don't give a shit what you think about me personally.
Yeah.
I'm your guy. But they decided, So at that point, podcasting was really starting to percolate. And I thought, do I want to go back into this whatever this is now? It's not as pleasant as it used to be. I can do this on my own and don't have any of the idiots over my head saying this and that, don't do this, don't do that. And that's what I did. I started a podcast, and I do it 5 days a week now for the last 9 years.
Yeah. And it's fantastic. I mean, my audience is going to love it. I'm going to put links in the description on how to get to that, because it's very interesting the way that you and Leslie work together and the team that you have working. It's a lot of fun. Jenna, every once in a while you bring someone in to mix cocktails on the Friday show. I really enjoy, and you have we're going to talk about your community on there too, because you have a community of people that are in your, I'll call it live audience. You do this in front of a live audience. They need to understand, my audience needs to understand, you do YouTube lives. I do that on Wednesday night once a week. You do it on Fridays for sure. What about the other nights of the week, the other days? The other
shows are pre-recorded within 24 hours of when they're posted. Two of those are premium shows. You need to subscribe to those, but that's what keeps it going. That's why we've been able to do 9 years. And so it's an interesting transition, being firmly cemented in radio and then going into this new category and seeing what it is. It's a lot different than radio in that millions of podcasts are out there. In radio, I had 2 or 3 direct competitors that were really doing something that would be right up against me as far as competition. There were many stations, but you count 2 or 3 as your direct competitors. This is millions. You're in the deep end of the pool now.
Yeah, you got to find a voice.
Yeah.
And by the way, you don't have a support system, to help you find that voice. And, so how do you approach your podcast differently than the radio shows? That kind of answers my question a little bit, because in terms of prep, format, tone, I mean, did those things change? Have you changed those things a little bit to match your YouTube or your social media audience?
I think the changes would be, the flow is different. Whereas with radio, because radio is constantly chasing the ratings ideology of how they can get the most ratings. So it's the format of a radio station is all set up to gin up the ratings. That's why they talk 6 minutes and then they stop at a certain time. That's why they do the traffic and all this stuff they don't really need to do anymore. But I guess nobody told them that everybody has a phone, they get all that information, but they keep doing the same old thing. The flow. If I want to talk 20 straight minutes with somebody, I talk 20 straight minutes. You can't do that on the radio.
Yeah.
At least on commercial radio, maybe NPR, but commercial radio, no. And you can see where we're up against the news. I got to take a break here and I'll be back with you. It's always, the format is always over your head. And I remember being at WGN and I went 1 minute past the top of the hour for the news and the program director came in. You missed the news at the top of the, I'm like, who the hell cares? I mean, really.
Did you
but
get a call?
they're clinging to that because that's what they are used to for decades, but that's not working as much anymore. So here's the other thing I want to mention. I don't do any politics, and it's not because of Trump or Biden or Bush or Obama. I've never done politics in my entire career because I just didn't find it entertaining. It's not my bag. It's not my wheelhouse. Plus, I say often, I don't want to be the fourth gas station in a 3 gas station intersection. There are thousands of shows that handle politics. Why do I want to jump into that? That's handled by other people. I found a niche, which is, and a listener defined it as, you make fun of all the nonsensical bullshit on the earth, and there's plenty of that regardless of politics. You can find plenty of material, which we seem to do all the time, and make fun of that. Let's do that. That's our lane. Pick a lane, pick a niche, and stay in it.
Yeah, I totally agree with the way that your format, works. It is a very silly way of spending. And, look, I'll tell you, it is odd to me that more radio stations haven't figured this out. More TV shows haven't figured this out. I mean, you get somebody like Joe Rogan, #1 podcaster on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
He can do 4 hours with someone you've never heard of before, Gary. I watched a 3.5-hour podcast with a cryptozoologist talking about Bigfoot. I didn't watch it all at once, but I watched the entire conversation because I like the way he asks questions and the way his personality when it comes to that.
Yes. Let me piggyback that before you go on, because here's what I thought when Trump was, and I'm not going to be political here. This is an observation. Trump was on with Rogan for 3 hours. I know that happened. Mm-hmm. And if I'm a political consultant and looked at this last election, and both of these candidates spent billions of dollars.
Yep.
Okay. All they really had to do was pick the right podcast. Because I got to be honest with you, if I had to analyze it as a consultant, Trump being on with Rogan for 3 hours pretty much, I think, tipped it in, where I know he invited Harris, but she wanted him to come to her. And I'm thinking, you got to look at everything that's going on here. Read the room.
Yeah,
because
I'm going to tell you something. Let me tell you something. You may be aware of this. You may not be aware of this. It was podcasts, but it wasn't the Joe Rogan podcast that turned the table for Trump. It was the Theo Vaughn podcast that turned it for Trump, because Theo sat there and talked about cocaine use. It was absolutely hysterical. If you have not seen Theo Vaughn's interview with President Trump, I guarantee you that is what provided him the biggest bump.
Okay, we're both saying the same thing, Wayne. He didn't have to pay a dime for that publicity.
Yes,
that's my point. Billions. This is obscene, the money they spend on these campaigns on both parties.
Yep.
And if you look at the landscape now, it's same as radio. It's much different, and you have to adjust. Otherwise, you're going to lose.
Yeah. You cannot have a candidate that cannot speak to everyone. You can't. There's too many people in the fuzzy middle. Mm-hmm. You cannot have that. You have to have a candidate that can talk to. J.D. Vance was also very good on all of those podcasts. He doesn't get a lot of credit. My wife absolutely fell in love with, and I do talk politics, you know that. Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid of anything. It interests me. I think people that are interested in talking about politics need to be the ones to do it. I think the ones that are not interested and they don't have an opinion or don't, you're in a position where I think you're very, very smart. I think that you have a show where you're trying to collect everybody, bring everybody in, and that's desperately needed right now. You're someone that's
Yes.
trying to build a community. Most everybody else is really focused on what they
Their
want.
viewpoint. Yeah.
I'm
I've
guilty
lived
of it myself.
Well, my viewpoint is, Wayne, that your politics is none of my business. Your whatever is, a lot of stuff is none of my business that you do.
Yeah.
That's not my point here. I'm here to entertain, hopefully, and have a good time. And half of my friends are on each side of the fence on both sides. So what am I going to do? Blow out half because I don't agree with them politically?
Not
No,
smart.
it's not my job to do. I observe. I'm an observer. And when I say Trump did this that I thought made a lot of sense, and I'm not trying to play a card here politically, but we all have to agree. If you were a Biden fan and saw that debate a year ago, my God, I mean, you can't get in front of a camera and melt down and expect people to go, well, I'll just put that aside. This is ever since the Nixon Kennedy debate, the first one on camera, which was out of Chicago in 1960. And they always say, if you've read anything about that, on camera, Nixon was sweating.
Yep.
And he sounded on radio, he won against Kennedy. But when you looked at him,
you couldn't see
because
those
now,
two men.
Right. When people look at you now, TV is the animal that sells or kills you. You have to work that camera like a Stradivarius.
I read
and
a
if
book,
you stumble, you're going to pay for it.
Yeah. I read a book recently, as a matter of fact, where Nixon refused makeup. He refused to put on makeup, and his 5 o'clock shadow, it was done late in the evening, his 5 o'clock shadow came across very, very well during that debate. You're right. If you closed your eyes, or if you just had the radio portion, people that listened to that debate on the radio were so confused. How do you say Kennedy won this debate?
Yes, that's what TV did.
What did you see? And then they watch it later and go, oh, wow. They get the pit of their stomach, feel the pit of their stomach and go, that's why. This sweaty bastard just, blew it for himself because he looked so uncomfortable. Ill-fitting shirt, and he wore no makeup, where Kennedy was cool and calm, didn't have the right answers necessarily, but man, just look, and you see that a lot.
Yeah, the camera does not give you any wiggle room. You have to know how that works, and audio too. You got to play all of that the best way you can. And there are consultants out there that I don't get how they're consulting some of these people, because I see them in front of the camera. And to hear, I'll promote myself a little bit here. The last mayoral election, I was approached by one of the candidates through a friend who was working on his campaign to give him some guidance on how he was doing. And I said, from what I've seen and heard, you need some work, and I'd like to be your guy. I want to be your consultant as far as your media presence. And he said, oh, let me think about it. And he didn't. And he stumbled around for 6 months before the election, and he lost. And I'm thinking, I saw all the cracks in what he was doing, but he kind of thought he could get by, but he didn't. And you got to be aware of what is not working. And I guess these guys have egos and they don't want to admit it or whatever, but you need to know what's working and not right away. Otherwise, forget it.
Well, a great segue into the next question. But I will say this: I have learned more about this, broadcasting, if you want to call it that or whatever. But I have applied more lessons that I've learned from you than from anybody else. I didn't need to pick up a book. I could, give you a call and ask you a question gratefully. Believe me, I'm very grateful for that. And also being a fly on the wall in conversations that I've heard you speaking about. I'd never heard the term verbal acne, where the ums and the ahs and the, stuttering and stuff, and how bad that made me sound. Now I have tools to kind of help me get rid of that. It takes so much practice. But I want to ask you, what is a myth or a falsehood, really, about success in radio or podcasting that you would like to expose, or that you wish people knew?
Well, I'll go with radio. I just found that the more successful that I got on the shows I was on, fellow broadcasters, it's the same, I believe, from what I heard, and you probably might know this because you did stand-up comedy. I hear stand-up comics really hate when other comics start to excel, and they can't deal with it, and they really turn on these people that are making movement up the ladder. And that's the way I found it in radio. People really didn't like you if you started to get some kind of success. Podcasting is more insulated and isolated. And I don't interface with a lot of podcasters, so I don't know that answer yet. So that's what I found. But we're in a world where people like the internet. There's pre-internet life and there's post-internet life.
Yeah.
And we've seen, if we've been around with both, we've seen the change. You know how life is now after the internet became a thing. Now, I'm going to throw something out that's kind of at random, but it's in the same wheelhouse. We were talking yesterday, you and I, on the phone, and you said, how long was it from when the car became and I used this on my podcast this week because I really like this piece of information. How long was it when the car became available to people where it wiped out all of the usage of horses and horse-related travel? I didn't know, and you said 4 years, because we were talking about AI.
Yeah.
And I said, well, car making probably offers more jobs than the horse trade. So that was a good thing. And as we evolve with these different technologies, is there a tipping point, Wayne, where is AI the tipping point where now we really have invented something that is destructive again? Like Oppenheimer, I think he didn't wake up and go, I want to invent something that's going to destroy mankind. And that can't be his first thought, right? Maybe he got up and thought, I want to invent a better space heater. And then it got out of hand. That, right? Isn't that it? Because AI, it's just morphing itself daily into bigger and stranger things.
Well, the perfect example of that is Nobel. Alfred Nobel. He created dynamite. He created TNT. And when he did that, he did it for the betterment of mankind, to make it safer for people to go in mines, for the mining industry, and to make it safer. And military immediately grabbed it and started making bombs out of it. And that's the whole reason we have Nobel Prize. It was him going, excuse me, society, my bad. I did not mean to create something so horrible, so bad. I just raised my hand.
Oh, Wayne, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question. How did I get so stupid? But he, as an apology, created the Nobel Prize. I mean, that is,
Yeah.
you're right. AI, look, I have had many debates. Very few people will debate me with artificial intelligence anymore. You have two camps in AI. The one camp is very pro AI, rah, cheerleading. AI is going to save mankind, and it does no wrong. Then you have people in my camp, and I'm not afraid to say this, that AI has the potential to absolutely F everything up. It will unemploy people. It will create. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. So a few years back, right when the first LLMs, the large language models, were being touted, okay, there were two guys at MIT, two PhD students at MIT. They created a large language model. They created an AI, and they fed into it the prompts to give the greatest compounds, to create the greatest compounds of benefit to humankind. Put it into AI. Okay, they'd taken all of this data, poured it into their large language model, and said, from this large data pool, please give me the greatest compounds that will benefit mankind. And they sat there and ate pimento cheese sandwiches and drank their, Mountain Dew, and they waited for this thing to churn out all these compounds. And it tickled them because it came up with some absolutely fantastic cures for things and beneficial vitamins and that kind of stuff, right? Well, one of these two knuckleheads looked over and saw an 8-year-old Apple laptop sitting there. and decided to prompt the same language model, plugged it in, prompted the same language model, give me the most detrimental, give me the most toxic, the most poisonous compounds out of this same data set that you can come up with on an 8-year-old laptop. And it did. It did. And so these two knuckleheads go to a TED Talk. It was a Nobel Prize adjacent. It wasn't the Nobel Prize because they won a big prize. And they went to a Nordic country and got on stage and they made the proclamation. They said, hey, you know what? Just for shits and giggles, we did this. We created the compounds that were most beneficial to human beings. And the other guy pipes up and he says, oh, by the way, we also found an 8-year-old laptop and told people from the stage what they'd done. And the crowd nervously laughed about it. Those two guys did not get to the airport before they were apprehended by some men in black suits. Their offices at MIT were raided and ransacked. They found themselves in front of some very curious people as to, do you have any copies of this anywhere? And people that from that moment on realized, oh, we are putting these GPTs in the hands of the people that really, this is open to anyone, Gary.
Yeah.
That you can go into a GPT and ask it questions. And by the way, don't let anybody tell you that, oh no, we've made these safety bumpers and all of this stuff. No, they haven't.
No.
They're not there. You have things like pricing optimization. You have things like hypersuasion. All of these things that if you knew what they were individually in themselves, just by themselves, you would be as bald as me from ripping your hair out. We're going down a very dark path with this nonsense. And it is going to be very dark. Let's put it that way.
Great. I need a drink now.
Yeah, well, we'll take you and me both, buddy. What keeps you motivated? And probably nothing after that last, diatribe. Sorry, probably cut that out. That may be extra content for people. But how do you decide on topics or guests for the show that you're doing now? What is driving your content right now?
I look at all kinds of stuff, and the listener is so in tune to what I do. It always has been. They are always sending me stuff, and almost all of it I can use because they know my sensibilities, and I'll get it from them. I have a producer who sends me stories all the time. Leslie brings in the stories for her particular segments or sends me stories that she thinks I'd like to riff on, and we talk about that. And just waking up in the morning, the world opens up and you're like, oh my God, this is manna from heaven. It's like I said, Wayne, I say this every now and then on the show. I like to Zapruder everything, meaning I look at a situation and you might see it a certain way. I'll look at it. I'll find 5 things that you might not have seen. Not saying you wouldn't, but I hyper analyze a lot of stuff and pull out the littlest thing that I think could be fun.
Yeah.
And one of those observations, and you're going to go, my God, the guy watched the Tony Awards. I watch award shows because it's the same feeling most of the time of when you push hard on your belly button, that weird sensation. Watching award shows for me, it's almost awkward that you can't buy anywhere else, because I always find the acceptance speeches awkward and not well done. Some of the performances are so weird to me because of the way I look at them and go, oh, these people, I mean, they really are needy, and they're trying to prove that they're not needy to me. But the one observation on this past Tony's show of whatever time you post this, the play was Sunset Boulevard got a revitalization. They won. I swear to God, if you can pull it up, there must have been 100 people that came up on stage to acknowledge this award. And by the time the person thanked everybody, people were still coming up and the speech was over, and there are people still, half the audience was empty now because they're all on stage. I thought the fire department's going to come up there and declare it's over limit.
Well, they have every writer,
I
every
don't know. They
director,
just kept coming. It's one, but that's my point, Wayne. That's one of those moments where I go, this is funny to me.
Wow.
All these people, I don't know if they were told to go up there or just decided, I want my time on camera. I'm part of this. I'm going up. Now, if I was ever at one of these award shows and saw that, if I wasn't associated, I'd get up too and just go up with them.
Yeah, of course.
I just walk up there.
Is this the audience participation?
Yeah,
I mean, they cleared the audience of the one
So
award.
it's just, I like weird stuff. I like seeing weird stuff like that because it's human stuff that you can't write.
I know that you do that. We did that Wednesday night media mashup.
Oh God, we had
together.
a segment, yeah.
And that was my entire week, Gary. I have to tell you, there is a hole in my heart. No one's going to know what we're talking about here.
Well, why don't we quickly explain? It was an hour program on this platform Metal that we've talked about here, where we had an hour to do what we wanted to do. And initially I thought we're going to analyze public speaking. That's what it started out to be. But then you and a bunch of other guys started bringing videos, and it became us just showing these weird ass videos from around the world. And what I liked about that, we had about 15, 20 people participate every week. And as the weeks went on, some of these men got terribly offended by it. And I'm thinking, really? I mean, okay, yeah, some of the videos were a little much, but this is, you know what you're getting into when you come into this group, I would think. They would come back week after week and they knew what we were doing, and they still came back and said they were offended.
Yeah. Look, frankly, we should have done that in the wild. We should have done that open to the public, because it was a private, you're right, it was a private men's group. It started off very tame, and as time went on, there was more flavor, let's put it that way, more flavor added until it was bursting with flavor. I mean, it was so much fun. It was a very good bonding exercise, and yeah, it was a tremendous amount of fun for me. And you're being very kind. It was your show that I inserted myself into, and believe me, square peg round hole, I did everything I could do to cram. It was very satisfying to be able to team up with you and to do that. It was
we did. The gist of the show was to analyze public speaking, and we did do that once in a while. And there are some public speakers out there that we really enjoyed reviewing.
Yep.
And there's a real art to that.
Yep.
And even people who are professionals, back to the verbal acne, you'll hear these very successful actors on talk shows, and I'll sit there, Wayne, and count the you knows. And I'm thinking, man, this is how you make your living. And you don't know how to get the verbal acne out, the ums and the you knows, and it does matter. A good speaker is a good speaker.
Yeah, that brings us back to AI, because you're at your suggestion, I became very self-conscious about that, and it was. You don't realize, because in a conversation, it's
right.
The way you speak one way, most people's brains don't work as fast as their mouth works. They know what they want to say. They just can't. It's more of a stutter. They can't get it out. And so I have started using AI tools that will help me combat that. It will take, like this interview, for example. I can remove all the pauses from it. I can remove all the verbal acne from me. I notice, I have listened to you speak for hours and hours, and I notice how well you do that on your own. It is a muscle that is very strong with you, where other people have very flabby speech. That's the best way I can, look at it. You're the guy kicking sand in everybody's face, but you should be. You're the guy that's in the Hall of Fame. Do you use any AI programs, any kind of AI automation in any part of the podcast process right now?
I'm such a Luddite with technology, and you know that because you've helped me with a number of things. I know I have to get on board. I'm resistant. I don't know what it is. And it's a factor of growing up in a certain era where you only had the remote control for your TV as your technology. That's all you had. And now we come into this last 25, 30 years where it's really speeding up and you're still trying to figure out how to cut and paste. And I swear to God, I still am. When a few months ago, somebody sent me a conversation, it was all AI. And oh my God, I could not tell. It was flowing in a way that I didn't know. And it was about me. They programmed in, talk about Garry Meier's career, a male and female, and they're talking back and forth. And I thought, these are real people, right? And it just flowed.
Like a radio program on Microsoft Teams. Everybody by now knows what Gary's talking about. And you're right. It's like a morning show or a radio broadcast, and they're talking about whatever subject.
That's not robotic. That is very human-like. And now I'm thinking, am I going to be replaced someday? Is that where it's going? And we talk about being replaced by technology. You go to the grocery store, and how many are self-checkout lanes now as opposed to somebody behind a cash register?
Yeah.
Right? It starts at gas stations. How many decades ago was it self-service? Decades.
Yeah.
I mean, they eliminated all those people except the guy behind the bulletproof glass selling lottery tickets.
Yeah.
All the attendants, huh?
Locked them away.
Yeah.
I mean, there are still some places where you cannot pump your own gas. So that's how far back they are. But you're right. You've got somebody locked in. Every gas station in California where I am, someone is locked in a one-by-one booth, can't move anywhere, and you leave them there all night, bulletproof.
But for those of us of a certain age, you pull up, guy come out, how much you need, put it in, do your windows, check your oil, long gone. All that is long gone.
Probably not to ever return either.
No. Are you kidding me? We're going to get more and more into a robot is going to take care of you when you walk in an office or whatever.
You know, it's weird because we grew up with the Jetsons.
People we always thought, oh, that's cool.
Yeah. The guy sitting at his desk and he's got one button he pushes. That's his job, is to push one button. Mm-hmm. George Jetson. And everyone thought, hey, or Star Trek. When Star Trek came out, the idea that the door would open and shut behind you on the Enterprise was, and every grocery store on the planet has those doors now, and people just walk through them. They don't even notice it, and it's the technology to do things. And by the way, look, that's what presents you and I, or me at least, with the opportunity to do something like this. Straight Talk Commerce, we have just crossed 250,000 views. 250,000 people have seen a video with my face on it. I had no opportunity for that, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. That was not even in a thought of mine. The ability that 38,000 people would be subscribed to a channel that I host and I get, a chance to talk to people. That was not something that I published 7 books. Who in the hell in their right mind would publish anything that I've ever written? Well, me. I've self-published. Some of those books were self-published and sold very well. And I got one in the Library of Congress, and all because of the effort that I put in. What I'm trying to say is there are no barriers to entry anything anymore. Maybe surgery. Maybe we found a way that we haven't found a way for you to be able to do a heart surgery, but that's about it right now.
Yeah. They're trying to eliminate pilots in the cockpit. There was a time, I remember when there were 3 guys in the cockpit, but I guess there was a time when there were 4. And that 4th one went a long time ago. The flight engineer, long time ago. They're trying to get it down to 1 pilot, and they'll get rid of him if they can figure out how to do the whole thing automatically. I mean, really, come on.
Harry, one day, and you and I will both be alive to see this, there will be people that cannot believe we were allowed to drive our own automobiles. Our great grandchildren or our grandchildren are going to say, I can't believe that you would get on a plane that was controlled by a human being, Grandpa. There's no, how in the world would you think to do that? Because remember the movie Airplane?
Yes.
The movie Airplane in the 80s. Okay, so we're talking the early 80s, movie Airplane. There were 4 people in that cockpit with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and, over,
Yeah.
under, Roger,
Right.
there were 4 people. There was a navigator, there were a pilot and a co-pilot. I don't know what the hell, communications maybe, that what the other guy did. I have no idea. But those large planes required 4 people to pilot them. Now it's AI, and right now they could do a complete flight. In LA right now, they've done an experiment with those Waygos or Waymos cars.
Mm-hmm.
And what they discovered was they are 88% safer, have 88% fewer accidents than human Uber or human-powered, human-driven vehicles. So what that tells me is very shortly, you and I are going to demand that people are removed from the driver's seat of cars. Because I'm telling you right now, it's not me and you. I don't know when the last time you were in an automobile accident. It's been 40
Never.
years since I've been in an automobile accident. And I wasn't driving. I'm 58. I wasn't driving at the time. So we're going to demand, because it's not you and I having these accidents. It's this other guy that should not have been behind the wheel. And if you're telling me that Google is a better driver, I'm willing to believe that, because I'm seeing you and I every day we drive on the road, we pass by another accident. Generally somebody impaired,
right,
from one way or another. They're eating something, putting on makeup, or they're impaired.
Well, drunk driving, 100% preventable.
Right. Yeah.
100%. Well, drunk drivers to me are terrorists. They're the same as terrorists. You don't know when they're going to strike, and they could kill you. That's a terrorist.
Yep. And generally speaking, they're the ones that survive the accident. So that is doubly, it's doubly bad. Look, let me ask you this. Is there an episode in particular of your podcast, I'm talking about your podcast now, that you are especially proud of, or something that surprised you with its impact, that you're still kind of feeling reverberations from?
Well,
I have one in mind, but I'm just curious what you think it is.
Okay. I'm trying to think of the past interviews I've done, and one of the odd moments was late comedian Richard Lewis was scheduled to be on my show 2 days after he died. I was texting him to confirm we're going to have you on Friday, on a Wednesday. At that moment, I get a call from a friend of mine. He just died. I had just talked to him a week before that, and I knew he was dealing with some health problems, but it's not where I thought he was going to be dead in a week. Why would I think that? But
sure,
there he was. And it's like those, but I'm trying, I can't, they're all in my head as something different. Like I said, Penn Jillette moved me because of the way he talked about his partnership. And what is the one you're thinking of?
Well, Richard Lewis, but I was thinking more of the Richard Lewis, the interview that you did with him, and seeing how that relationship, you know what I mean? Everybody got to see a little bit into the relationship that you had with Richard Lewis, and then to realize that not long after that interview that you had with him wasn't much. He didn't live much longer after that.
No.
And that was the one that came to my mind the most. But you're right, Penn Jillette. You just had Jeremy Piven on your promoting. I can't remember now what he was
doing
promoting.
Stand-up in Chicago.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. He's doing a special. He's doing a
right,
stand-up special.
Right, and he's recording that special for a platform. And he has had quite a meaty career.
Yeah.
And the one movie that intrigued me, which he had a small part in, but it was powerful, Black Hawk Down. If you've ever seen this movie, he was a helicopter pilot in Black Hawk Down, and it was a magnificent piece of filmmaking. If you see, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh,
You've seen
listen,
it.
not only did I see the movie, but about 3 or 4 years ago, I went to a seminar for internet, podcasting and stuff. And one of the guys that spoke ran the Mogadishu Mile. And so if you remember from the movie, NATO forces that came into the outskirts of Mogadishu refused to come and help American soldiers. And these guys were forced to run about 8 kilometers to safety under fire because the NATO, our pals in NATO decided not to put themselves at risk.
And our soldiers were in a shooting gallery.
Yeah.
The Somalians were armed to the teeth, and they knew the landscape, so you were doomed from the get-go, and it was just brutal. And I'm assuming most of that was true to form of what we saw.
Oh, he was talking about that movie like, he said, look, obviously there are some differences. You can't smell what was going on there. He's talking about the guy in front of him and the guy behind him had crapped their pants. Okay. That's a real thing. You can't get the smell from running there. This guy was shot 3 times in both legs. 2 times in one leg and once in the other. So he was shot 3 times, both legs were shot, and he was running to get the hell out of Mogadishu. So, and all because the NATO forces wouldn't come in and assist the rescue of that pilot.
Here, now that you're sparking my memory, this is not a celebrity, but I call him a hero in my mind. I always talk about the litter that lines our nation's highways, and I don't care what state you live in, it's probably going to be where you're driving down the local highways and there's garbage everywhere. And 90-some% of that is people opening their car window and tossing it out. I don't know what they're thinking, but it's not getting picked up. And when I was driving with you on a Los Angeles freeway recently, I said, who picks this stuff up? It's the same across the country. I've driven across the country and seen it. And then you came up with an idea. You said, how about this? These people that have been forgiven on their tuition, they have to go out and pick up trash on the highway to pay back. And I added in and removed the graffiti on the walls, on public walls. And we thought, well, there's a plan. That's what we got to do. I had a guy on several months ago. I read about him or something. He decided the same thing in his neighborhood in suburban Chicago. Too much trash. He organized a bunch of friends and they go out all the time and pick up trash in their neighborhood and other neighborhoods on their own, don't get paid for it. Nobody. And I'm thinking, there you go. There's somebody I want to highlight because they're actually doing something that makes a difference.
No fluff, no hype, just the real deal. Wayne Altman's here, yeah, you know the drill. Talking business, talking shop, making moves non-stop. From e-com to hustle, straight talk, no props. Straight talk, no gimmicks, no lies. Hey, I break it down with the sharpest minds. Money, moves, mindset, grind. If you're ready to win, then tune in live. Big names, big games, all the lessons they bring. From Jelly Belly to AA Kings. From the startup grind to the top tier pros. We crack the code, now here we go. Straight talk, commerce, getting to know with Wayne Altman. Let's start the show.